Just listen. Fiction. Theme 1. Family Album. Mr. and Mrs. Castle lived in a white house with a big green lawn. Their 3 children were called Clement, Clarissa, and Carlo. 3 little castles, said Mr. Castle, but very small ones. More like cottages, really. Mrs. Castle was studying to be an atomic scientist. What a clever one she is, said Mr. Castle. If she decided to go to the moon, I don't think she'd even need a rocket to go there. One day, Mrs. Castle announced that she had found herself a job. Important scientists were developing an electronic medicine to cure sunspots, and they had sent for Mrs. Castle. But who is going to look after us? Asked Clement. Isn't anyone going to be here when we come home from school? Asked Clarissa. Carlo was too young to say anything, but he looked worried. I shall be here, my dear little cottages, Mr. Castle cried. You have no reason to be anxious. He washed and dried the dishes. He vacuumed the carpets, put the dough to rise in a warm place, planted a row of cabbages, folded the wash, baked the bread and the cake. He swept the house from top to bottom, wiped down the counter, had a quick cup of tea, put Carlo down for his afternoon sleep, had another cup of tea, prepared dinner, cleaned the bath, read the paper, kissed the children when they came home from school, and Mrs. Castle when she came home from work, and asked them all what sort of day they had had. Then he gave Mrs. Castle something to drink, handed her the paper, and took the children out for a game on the big green lawn. He was an excellent house father. Indeed, he was so good that one day he actually ran out of work. While he tried to think of just what to do next, there came a soft thud on the roof, and then another one. Sunspots! Cried Mr. Castle, and ran outside. It was not the sound of falling sunspots he had heard, but ripe plums tumbling off the old plum tree that grew behind the house. Mr. Castle was delighted. Gathering up the fallen plums, he made 3 pots of plum jam. Jam! What a treat! The children cried. The next day, many more plums fell from the tree, and Mr. Castle made 20 pots of plum jam. The following day, the ground under the tree was covered with big purple plums. That day, Mr. Castle had enough plums to make 30 pots of jam. But the day after that, there were even more plums. Mr. Castle had run out of jam jars. What a challenge, he cried. Not a single plum must be wasted. He filled all the vases in the house with jam. He filled all the glasses too, even Carlo's rabbit mug, and the teapot were filled with jam. The whole house is like a jam factory, said Clement. It's like a school for jam pots, said Clarissa. Your father is a born artist, said Mrs. Castle. He is the Picasso of jam makers. Now all the work is done, said Mr. Castle, looking pleased. We can look forward to eating this delicious jam all year long. They began with jam sandwiches. Mrs. Castle, Clement, and Clarissa had jam sandwiches in the lunches Mr. Castle prepared for them every morning. Carlo, who was cutting new teeth, had jam in his crusts. Hooray! Called Mr. Castle. We've emptied the teapot already. We'll be able to have tea with our cakes, cookies, and tarts. That winter, the roof leaked a little. Mr. Castle's jam proved very useful, for as well as being delicious, it stopped leaks. When the tiles came off the bathroom floor, Mr. Castle stuck them down again with jam. After weeks of devoted jam eating, they could put flowers in the vases again, and drink from glasses instead of from egg cups. wouldn't really care if I never saw another pot of jam in my life," Clarissa whispered to Clement. "But don't tell Daddy I said so." In the meantime, they had jam with everything, and on everything, and under everything. Their dreams became haunted with jam. Clement dreamed that the sky opened, and jam rained down on him. Clarissa dreamed of fat, shadowy jam pots marching through the night, crying out a terrible war cry of "Jam! Jam! Jam!" Mrs. Castle dreamed that it was proof that sunspots were caused by too much jam, and Carlo dreamed great jammy dreams as well. Their days were full of jam eating, and their nights of dreams all dripping with jam. Finally, one morning, Mr. Castle went to the cupboard to get down the next pot of jam, only to find it was empty. There was not a single potful left. "Let's have egg sandwiches for lunch," said Mrs. Castle. "Spaghetti and salad," cried Clarissa. "Let's have fish and chips," suggested Clement. "But first, let's have a game on the lawn," said Mr. Castle. "We've eaten so much jam that we look like jam pots ourselves. We shall have to get back in shape." While they were playing on the lawn, Mr. Castle heard a soft thud on the roof. The plums were ripe again.